I'd like to call the Tuesday, March 3rd, 2020 Papillion City Council meeting to order. Mrs. Brown, would you please take the roll?
Sunday. Mumgard. Gaines. Glover. Jaworski. Klug. Stubbe. Engberg.
Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Do we have an affidavit of publication on file?
We do.
Current copy of the Open Meetings Act is posted in the back of the council chambers. Got Josh Charvette with us tonight to give a annual report from Sarpy County Economic Development Corporation. Josh.
Andrew got double booked tonight, so he figured that out when he was walking out of the office. So I'm here tonight. So we will jump into kind of our return on investment, but also just kind of our annual kind of roundup of things. I'm going to kick things off real quick, just running through the spreadsheet with all the numbers on it real quick. A couple things to notice. You'll see our total permit valuations for the year was almost 1.5 billion. That's, a big number. A lot of that's due to the Facebooks and the Googles out there, but if you were at our annual meeting, we kind of looked at the past 2 years, what happens if we take the Facebook and the Googles out, and we still did see kind of modest growth without those projects in across the whole county. So it's good to know. We were kind of worried, what if just these giant numbers are kind of skewing the things, but we have seen growth aside of those projects. But then when you lump those projects in, obviously things jumped up quite high. Another thing to notice, single family housing permits issued versus plats. So we platted 300 more lots than were permitted this past year. That's something that we think reflects a really healthy market with the number of plats that are going up, and then those plats are getting filled and houses being built on those lots. Then last thing I'll just touch on. So the last couple pages, the major valuation projects over $75,000. As you can see, the 10 of the top 11 projects are all in here in Papillion. So kudos to you guys for the great work you continue to do. And I know the work that some of our projects ask of the city staff is quite substantial. And when you got everything else going on, we really appreciate the hard work of all the staff here. So thank you again for that. Jumping quickly to, I'll just touch on our fourth quarter report. So we landed 2 projects this past fourth quarter, the Papillion Foods project here, and then also the mailing facility for Physicians Mutual down in Bellevue. So 2 Shopco facilities opened up, the distribution center got filled here, and then the old retail space in Bellevue got filled. So we're excited to see those, unfortunate to see those come on the market, but excited to get those filled up rapidly. So move on to the annual return on investment. So we had 5 projects landed in Papillion, total capital investment of over $700 million with those projects, and then 340 new and retained jobs, so 300 new jobs and 40 retained jobs. We expect those new job numbers to rise as time goes on. I know a lot of times with projects, if they have to meet a certain requirement to get incentives, those are the jobs that they're going to kind of commit to and they're going to report. So we expect that 300 to be lower than what's actually going to happen out there. We did have 3 prospect visits. 20 opportunities of those are projects that we submitted sites to, and a large reason for that is because the real estate here, the R&R buildings, the ID Logistics Parks, and the Shopco Distribution Center. One of the nice things about R&R is when we get projects, we can submit that site anywhere from a 25,000 square foot user to a 300,000 square foot user. So that's really a wide array where we can, submit that property to just about anything that comes in the door for us. So really happy to have that on the market and have those buildings continue to go up. Some other things that we spent money on this year, we spent some money on a site cooling water waste study with the data centers kicking out so much water that's not really wastewater, sewer water. We wanted to see, how can we treat that water instead of kind of overloading the capacities at the sewer facilities. So we spent some money on that and kind of found some solutions that are going to work well for that. Spent some money on data center impact analysis, which we kind of talked a lot about at the beginning of the year as Google landed. And then also spent some money on a property that it's 156 in Fairview. So there's a property down there that's, some of it's in the Springfield territory, some of it's in the Papillion territory. So that's kind of our next Go certified site that we're working on. It's the best site we could get. It's a little bit off the beaten path, but as development continues to grow down the Highway 50 corridor, we think that's going to be a very attractive site. We want to make sure that committed to have 156th Street going through that area and have some potential industrial lots down there. So you'll see more on that coming soon. Just kind of other things we did, 14 business and retention expansion meetings in Papillion. We had a total of, I think we had 55 last year, 45 this year total for the kind of the 100 goal over 2 years. So about a third of those coming this year in Papillion. We hear a lot of the need for more workers and more sites. One thing that we're kind of seeing is a lot of industrial users kind of outgrow their spaces. It's difficult for them to find a space with outdoor storage, but they also want to stay kind of close to where they are now. I think that's just kind of it's something we're seeing countywide. It's something we're seeing metro-wide. So it's something that we just kind of like to communicate. Other than that, the only complaint we get is we're so busy we don't have time to kind of explore other opportunities. So that's kind of where some of these business assists come in, where we try and connect folks to, Metro Community College if they want to have a contact within the school districts, to try and kind of work on some programs, or just kind of make connections in between businesses where say, hey, we'd really like a warm lead with, X company to see if there's some potential to collaborate on some projects. Beyond that, those are kind of a run through of some of the things we did this past year. It was certainly an exciting year in Papillion, and we look for more success this upcoming year. But if there's any questions, I'd be happy to address those.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right.
Any questions? Thanks again.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate the partnership. Ms. Myers, Administrator's Report, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple quick updates. Just want to remind you all of the Papillion Landing Community Center grand opening on Friday, March 13th. The formal ceremony and ribbon cutting is scheduled to begin at 3 p.m. Events are going to be held all day from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. and are open to the public. And if you want more information, you can go to our city website and then drill down to the Papillion Landing, and there'll be more information on our website for that. Please join us for a fun day. And lastly, I just wanted to follow up on our strategic planning session. So I owe you some additional information. So I have scheduled to meet with the department heads in March. I think it's about 3 weeks away, to develop some action items to support the 5 overall goals that you presented and developed during the strategic planning session. So once we've gone through that exercise and have some choices from you on those action items, I'll schedule a time for us to meet and follow back up on that so we can finish that plan. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Motion by Councilman Klug. Second by Councilman Gaines. Do you have any proponents? Any opponents? Council discussion? Please vote.
Eight yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Next is item E1, Ordinance 1870. An ordinance to amend Papillion Municipal Code Section 14615 to generally prohibit the parking of mobile vendors on Washington Street between 1st and 2nd Streets, to prohibit sales where customers would have to stand in a street, and to provide for an effective date. This is a public hearing. I'll call for proponents. Anybody want to speak in favor? Any opponents? Anybody want to speak against? And if you'd state your names for the record.
Hi, I'm Kate Rannells. My husband Dan and I own Twisted Vine.
Kim Ehlers, President of the Papillion Downtown Business Association.
Not really an opponent, but just wanted to make sure that as the only business that this directly does impact, that we've had an opportunity to kind of have our voices heard. We did send an email to the council and some of the other administrators.
And just for a quick note, we did make sure a copy of that is at everybody's tables, and we'll include that in the minutes as well.
Perfect, thank you. So first off, thank you to Mayor Black for bringing it to our attention. Like I said, we are the owners of Twisted Vine and the only business kind of located on that stretch of Washington Street that would be directly impacted by this change. Of the 9 annual permits that were issued by the City of Papillion for mobile vendors in 2019, 6 of those were issued for the block that we are on to sit in front of Twisted Vine. We had the opportunity to speak to Councilmans Glover and Mumgard. They did let us know that the proposed ordinance change is being considered to address some supposed safety concerns in addition to complaints from neighboring businesses. Food trucks are a large part of many progressive entertainment areas. You go to Omaha, Benson, Midtown, they're everywhere. They draw foot traffic, which Kim can attest to as another owner of a business in downtown. They generate tax dollars for the city, and they offer a variety of food options to our residents. The trucks are required to be street legal. They pose no greater danger than a UPS van coming down the street, other buses, or large trucks with trailers. As the city is also looking to consider ways to slow traffic on 84th Street, I know the idea of narrowing those lanes is actually being considered, which the food trucks are already doing that for you. As we have for the past 3.5 years, we've worked really closely with the city as we've tried to grow Twisted Vine, really bring downtown Papillion to that destination level where we can have foot traffic, have other businesses be successful. We respectfully disagree that the vendors are a safety concern, but of course, we will continue to work with the city, abide by any changes that we need to make, and look to make different arrangements for parking of the food trucks. But we hear a ton of compliments from our customers. They're very excited to have the options, something different, something new, some other businesses that they haven't seen as they've been walking around downtown. So we would definitely look to continue to grow that.
I'd just like to add, over the past 7 years, we've worked so hard in downtown Papillion and working with new businesses coming into town to really create new awareness and bring people not just in Papillion, but outside our community into Papillion to show them what we have. And I don't know if you guys realize, but food trucks are kind of like a band. They come with groupies. There are people that watch each week, where are these food trucks going to be parked? And they make it a point to go to that truck for their favorite food. So by having a food truck here, and maybe once a week, maybe twice a month, it brings new people to Papillion, or even people in Papillion that bypass 84th Street. It gets them down to our shops, reintroduces them, or maybe shows them for the very first time what Papillion has to offer. I think it's a real important thing, and I think Kate and Dan have been very respectful. They try and not duplicate food that's being served in our area restaurants, so it gives our local people something new and brings new people to us. So thank you.
Mr. Mumgard.
Okay, I have several questions. First off, how long have you been, what do you do to promote the food trucks? I'm not sure what the system is.
So the food trucks are, most of them are within the Omaha area, so they're already licensed and operating in Omaha. So then many of them reach out to us. They go to other places and people tell them, oh, you need to go to Twisted Vine, so they'll reach out to us, or we see them, or we see them at other places. People recommend them and we reach out. Then we put out a weekly kind of event summary of what's going to be happening at Twisted Vine. So we say Friday night we have this food truck and this band member playing. And so we use Facebook and our website.
Okay. So are you reaching out to them and recruiting them to come down?
It's probably 50-50. Most of the ones we have right now have reached out to us. They have heard from their customers that they should come down.
Okay, so how long have you been doing that?
About 3.5 years.
All right. First up, during that time period, have you ever seen an incident or heard of an incident where the activity around the food truck endangered anybody, forced anybody out in the street, or made cars stop, anything like that that would be a public safety issue?
No, sir.
Would you have heard of something like that if it had happened? I mean, do you keep track? Or do you pay attention?
We do. We are down there every Friday night that we have a food truck. We are often outside talking with customers. I feel like we would have heard. We've never been notified by the police. We've never been notified by anyone. The only thing that the police have come to us with is parking concerns from a neighboring business that felt that 2 spots were taking parking from their business.
Well, okay, now that is to mine.
Which isn't a safety concern.
No, but that's an aggravation. So let's talk about that. Okay. What do you need 2 spots. Mm-hmm. And so you need to do something to make sure the spots are there, because what time does the food truck show up?
Usually around 5 o'clock.
Okay, what do you do? What's your system there? What's the problems that are coming up with that?
We originally started by putting 2 orange cones in the 2 spots that were in front of Twisted Vine. We were notified by the city police that someone had complained that we were illegally blocking public parking. So in talking with some other folks, they recommended that we, the option that was given to us was to park our cars there, because then it wasn't illegal. So now we, my husband or I or our employees will park our 2 cars in front of the bar, and then when the food truck gets there, they call. We go outside, we pull our cars around to the lot in the back, and the food truck pulls in.
Well, yeah, and I'd like to see a more efficient way of
We would
doing
too.
that. Would you be against having a system where you could buy a permit and you in fact had to pay for those spots, and then they would be yours, and you would have the authority to put a cone out there or do something like that? Would you go along with that?
We did, and we actually put that to Christine and Amber when this first came up, and that wasn't something that was on our books at the time, so we couldn't do that. But yeah, that was actually an option that we had proposed.
See, I'd like to formalize that parking process, not just putting cars out there and moving them around. That just doesn't seem to be the way to do it.
It is a huge inconvenience, but it is, we felt like that was a reasonable ask that the city made of us.
Okay, your letter mentions several things about the alley. I find it, any discussion about what we can do with the alley behind your business, I find very intriguing. I would like to see the city do something to create an entertainment district or some sort of an event space behind your business. What have you been doing? What do you want to do? What could you do back there?
We would be very interested. The thing that's different about downtown Papillion is there's no developer. There's no big money. There's no one coming in and buying up 7 properties and having this really contrived plan. We are all small business owners. We have bought these buildings and these businesses with our retirement funds. So we are doing what we can as we can. So we would love to partner. We've had lots of conversations with Gina V and Kevin Sapinski about how we could do, even not on a permanent basis, but do like food truck alleys and have bands in the parking lot that's adjacent to the back of us, partnering with the other bars, blocking off the 2 ends of the alley and having it be something. We've had street dances.
Or alley fair.
Alley fairs.
fair up and down the
So
alley.
we've talked about that a lot, but we also know the kind of the hurdles you have to jump to be able to close down streets and all of that. But yeah, we would love to do that. We did recently purchase with our, again, no big developer, but we did purchase the building that is directly to our south, which also has a lot of parking to the back. And our goal is to, as we can, start to create that destination so that we could have more of an impact there and possibly come back. We know that the new entertainment district zoning doesn't necessarily apply the way that it's written right now, but it'd be great if we could have that same kind of consideration for downtown where people and businesses already are instead of just proposals.
Okay, well, I'll tell you that I'm not in favor. I don't think we need to move the food truck out of there, but I think there's many different things we could do to improve the situation. The alley being one, the parking spaces being one. So if you would work with us on
Absolutely.
that would be very productive. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Mr. Ingberg.
Well, I would concur with Councilman Mumgard. Public hearing time isn't time for the council to discuss it. That's your time tonight. But I will tell you that as it sits now, I wouldn't vote for moving them off 84th Street. I think there's other ways. There's other reasons I won't get into it tonight because this is your time. But I've long thought that the alleys, the so-called alleys that served a different purpose years ago, would be a much better purpose now in converting them into a venue, if you will, to develop the rear of businesses down there as an entertainment venue of some kind. As a matter of fact, I wish we had over the years ago, even before my time, had an access way from 84th Street mid-block from the front to the back. That would be ideal, and maybe somebody will tear down their building. We'll be able to do that, but in any case, I'd be very much willing, because we're trying to do something on 2nd Street in that area as well with some redevelopment downtown. I'd be very interested in having some conversation with you guys about doing something with that alleyway. But let me ask you this. If that were the case, would that solve, or at least make it more palatable to move it from 84th Street to the back side of your business if it was more of an attractive venue designed for that purpose? Would that work?
Yes, and anytime you make a move like that, our customers are used to having food trucks out in front for 3.5 years. It's just a retraining. It's communicating, it's marketing, it's putting signs out. So I think it's just a retraining, but I think it would make it more appealing to people if there was more going on back there, or at least we had the option to do something on a regular basis. But yes, there are some things about just the aesthetics of the alley that it would be great if we could kind of clean that up along the way to make that a more attractive space.
Well, I will tell you, as it sits now, again, I would support this as presented. I happen to not think it's a safety issue even. I think it calms traffic, actually. But nevertheless, I would suggest that we continue to work on doing something with the alleys as a venue, both on your side and the other side of 84th Street. And until that's completed or that's improved, I would suggest we leave it alone for now. Except, as Councilman Mumgard said, maybe come up with a more efficient way of reserving spots, particular days and times, or if there's a permit. So I know you don't do it every week, but if we could reach some accommodation that way, that'd be the way I'd want to do it.
Mr. Jaworski.
Thank you.
And I'm going to agree with Councilman Mumgard and Ingberg also, because when I first saw this, the first thing I thought of is we're trying to make downtown better. Why are we going to try and run these guys out of here? I hope we can come to an agreement. If the alley does work better, that's great. If it doesn't, I'm still supporting downtown because we want downtown to grow and get more people down there. So there's no way. To me, with us doing what we're doing downtown, this would almost be us being hypocrites at the same time. So I cannot do that. I will not do that. I am not going to support this. So thanks for everything you guys do.
Still in public hearing, Mr. Sunday.
I too want Twisted Vine to be successful. I also want the other businesses downtown to be successful, and I have spoken to other business owners down there who have voiced concerns about the food vendors. Did the prior owners of Dort's ever come to you with their issues that they had? No? Because they were pretty, they were pretty boisterous about it when I spoke to them. Also, the current ownership of the same establishment now called Papillion Pub, have they spoken to you?
The conversations that we've had with the owners of Papio Pub have really been around, they deliver food to our business. We have their menus in the bar. We encourage our customers all the time to order from them. Cheryl does come down and bring samples of her new menu items around. So the conversations that we've had with Papio Pub have always been very cordial and very partnering in nature. We have heard through the grapevine that then, there are complaints. Like Kim said, we never bring a food truck that directly competes with Brownies or Papio Pub. We don't have burgers and fries on purpose. I don't believe that having another food option means that that they both can't do better. If another restaurant opens across the street or next door, it doesn't mean that they can't do well as well.
I know one of the complaints, among others, was the saving of the parking spaces. They didn't seem to like that because that's taking away a potential customer from them right out front of their business because those spots are taken.
We do not park in front of Papio Pub. We park in front of Twisted Vine, just to make sure everyone's clear on that. There is ample parking behind their business, our business. There's a public lot. There's parking on the ends of the block. I don't believe that the two spots that we are taking in front of Twisted Vine is what might be impacting Papio Pub's business.
The final point I wanted to raise is I don't think it happens all the time, but I myself have seen some of the time the vendor food trucks, they're not parked exactly parallel to the curb, and so their corner end of their vehicles sticking out into traffic a little bit.
Okay.
And I think that is part of the safety concern that I've heard people talk about.
Okay. Yeah, and we can certainly make sure that the trucks are aware that they need to make sure that that they're parked legally along 84th Street. We've never gotten a complaint regarding that from the police, but we can bring that to their attention for sure.
I would like long-term, I think short-term, I think it's fine the way it is until we can find a long-term solution, but I really would support the long-term solution to be to move those food trucks to the back. That would be my position.
Mr. Mumgarde.
Okay. Okay. I guess this is a request to the staff. There are some parts of this ordinance that are perfectly fine. We ought to regulate how people do food trucks in town, where they do it, etc. I would ask the staff to work on some sort of a amendment that would be a permitting system so that we could formalize the use of the parking spaces, so that it's clear to everybody why they're doing this, why those spots are empty, that the city's approving this, and then have a fee. I know the parking there is free now, but if somebody's going to make money off of parking there, I guess you can pay for the parking spots.
Sure.
Put together some sort of an amendment with those kinds of terms in it so that we can consider that when we vote on this.
We'll work on that. Mr. Glover.
You know, I have no intention of trying to run the food trucks out of downtown Papillion, but I do have concerns. And I think I totally disagree with Mr. Mumgarde in terms of having somebody buy a couple parking stalls. If you look at one side of the street, what are there, 7, 10 parking stalls at most? How many businesses do we have on that side of the street? The poor shoe man down there, somebody comes in to get their shoes repaired or pick a pair of shoes up, and there's no parking stalls because somebody's bought 2 or 3 stalls along that side of the street. That makes absolutely no sense to me at all. I think there are a number of things that we can do. I'm for the food trucks. I'm not for them to be on 84th Street. I have actually taken pictures and watched. I'm one of the few council members that, I'm retired, I understand that, but I'm one of the few council members when we have an issue, whether it's safety in downtown, whatever, I'll sit for hours in my truck and watch. There is no doubt in my mind that the one vehicle that has the dually pickup and the other apparatus that goes behind it is a safety hazard to downtown. I have pictures to show that. And all I'm saying is it is not a good option. I think we need to find something different. I've heard some recommendations tonight that might make it different, but I am totally against having people rent parking stalls when what happens on the other side of the street when somebody wants to rent a couple parking stalls in front of their business. You know, it makes no sense to me. So that's my 2 cents worth, and I know we're not supposed to be airing out this tonight. That's for the next meeting. But Mr. Mumgarde has a tendency, every time we get into a situation like this, to bait people into making statements that he wants to hear. So be it.
If I could just say one thing before we close on this. As far as the reserved parking, I do think this would be a time frame situation where possibly reserved on behalf of Twisted Vine 5 p.m. on down. I can say the majority of the businesses close at 4:30 or 5 o'clock as far as retail places go. So there's been many times when I've come around the corner to park there, the whole west side of the street's still empty. So there's a lot of parking available. And the fact that those 2 parking places, I don't feel takes away from any of the businesses. I have in front of my store for Kajamas Boutique, it's filled with guys getting haircuts, but yet my ladies still find a way to get in our store. They may park across the street and walk over, but there's always a way if they want to get to us, they'll find a way. So.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other opponents or anybody want to speak neutral? I'll close the public hearing. I will just make a note, because it is unusual that we have this much discussion during public hearing, but I know a lot of it was dialogue with the individual that was at the podium, so I kind of let it go because it was relevant there. And then just as a quick note, we'll figure out a way either administratively or through a committee to carry on the discussion about the parking stall. And we will work with the Downtown Business Owners Association to make sure we're thinking of all of the businesses downtown as we're crafting that, so we'll reach out as part of that as well. Close the public hearing. Item E2, Ordinance 1871, an ordinance to amend Papillion Code Chapter 190 by adding a new Article 6 entitled Truck Routes to provide for the designation of truck routes upon which trucks must be operated, subject to certain exceptions, and to provide for an effective date. This is a public hearing. Do we have any proponents? Yes. And if you'd state your name for the record when you come up.
Hi, my name's Mike Erdman. I live at 1001 Madison, South Madison, corner of Madison and Grunther Street, which sees a lot of truck traffic. It's really, as I look at my intersection, it's very deceiving the way it rounds. It's a three-way intersection with Grunther coming east-west, Madison north-south. It kind of curves a little bit, goes down the street. This is also the same intersection that had the no parking request that was tabled recently in the last couple of weeks. I see a lot of damage on my property. It's from a lot of truck traffic, sometimes encroaching 6 feet onto my property. I constantly reseed. It happens more often than I'd like. I'm constantly filling it in. I've got pictures here that I can share with the city council. It's really becoming a problem, and I know the way the intersection is and the way it's located over by Trumbull Park Elementary School, which is a safety issue there too, is coming off 370, you come down 90th Street and you end at Grunther. Grunther goes east-west from there down to Madison. So any truck that finds their way in there is gonna come through that intersection. The way it's paved, curved, comes over the hill, comes east-west. It's really deceiving, and there's some big problems. And so I am happy to see that if we can at least, I don't think we'll eliminate the truck traffic, but I think we can certainly decrease it by changing or at least modifying the truck routes. I know Ed Yoakum from Yoakum Concrete is taking some heat because he brings up some pretty big equipment up that street, but he was there first. I mean, he's been there since that neighborhood was built in 1959. His used to be that dirt road. Grunther used to be a dirt road in front of his property. I know he's taking a lot of heat, but he's really a small percentage of the truck traffic that comes by that location. He's pretty good about driving the trucks. The only issue I have with his location is he brings what's called a lowboy trailer in, which is a huge long trailer for heavy equipment. I know he does his best to get around that corner. He doesn't do a whole lot of damage, but he bumps a few curbs. I can't give him a lot of grief for that because that's his only access. I don't think he can come down 90th Street because it's all asphalt, and I don't think that street would handle that kind of load. So Madison being a feeder street, everybody's coming north-south, east-west off Grunther, we get a lot of damage. It's really, I guess what I'm trying to say is, I'm glad that the city's doing something for this. I hope we can eliminate most of the semi-trailer traffic, and that's what seems to be creating most of the damage. But it's not limited to that. Straight trucks, et cetera. I don't care whether it's Nebraska Furniture Mart or a school delivery truck going down to Papillion, down to Trumbull Park. I've seen them bump that curb too. I sit outside my neighborhood or with my neighbors, and every other car that comes by there bumps that. So it's really a poorly designed intersection. I'd like to see more done to it, possibly expanding it. There's tons of right-of-way. There's 12 feet between the sidewalk and the street around that curve. So maybe there's something that can be accommodated there, at least for the traffic that does have to pass by there. So that's my issue there. I guess the resolutions I'd like to see is, again, if we can expand that would be great. Expand that street a little bit or cut that corner. There's guide wires that come down off the major telephone pole that's there, or the utility pole, and I've got pictures here that they're within 3 feet of those guide wires, and if they were to snap those off, it'd bring the whole power down for a 5 or 6 block square area, which is just crazy. The line of sight needs to be redesigned. I think that's part of the no parking issue that was proposed. And I guess one of the solutions I'd like to see is if we can pave that a little bit more, take those guide wires down, and maybe OPPD put an engineered pole or something there that doesn't need the guide wires. That would be a great idea also. I think it would improve that corner and flow of traffic, not only for safety, but there's a lot of kids that walk and go by that, a lot of kids on bikes, there's the park down there, a lot of foot traffic, a lot of people walking dogs, there's all kinds of things, and the truck traffic just doesn't need to be on that. I'm not sure if this intersection is typical of other intersections where there's issues in town, but this is certainly unique in terms of no east-west between 96th and 84th, and no north-south between Lincoln and 370. And I anticipate that once 84th and 370 is developed, it's only going to bring more of these problems into that neighborhood. So I'd like to see it addressed, and I appreciate the city at least tackling it at this point. So.
Appreciate that. And typically after the public hearing, it's the next council meeting, we have the third hearing, which is discussion and a vote so a little bit for public and for the council. We probably won't have it at the next council meeting because actually the two council members that represent that ward, Mr. Sunday and Ms. Klug, myself, administration and engineer, we did meet with Mr. Yoakum just this last week, and we talked a lot about the very issues you talked about. His traffic versus other traffic. We talked about the radius there. We looked at where it was running up, and we had some very good cordial conversations on some of the very things you said about making some actual improvements there so when the trucks do make the swing, they're not in your grass. And Mr. Yoakum's very open to doing some of that, and we're doing some engineering studies around that as well. So I think we got some good discussions going there. We also talked about removing the approved truck route on 90th, and so other traffic is not encouraged, but I still have an exception for Mr. Yoakum. We're working that out legally of how to incorporate that. And then the last thing is even if there are not approved truck routes, there are some trucks that still can be there by right, delivery trucks, garbage trucks, and that type of thing. But I think even with that, if we can figure out how to improve that intersection, as you suggested, that'll take care of some of that. So we've got some good cooperative conversations going, and I think both the council members are going to work to keep you updated on that.
Okay, great. Yeah, long-term solution is the recommendation.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Stubbe.
Yeah, So I'm curious from the standpoint that you mentioned Yoakum, would obviously he's been there first. You indicated that, but he's driving trucks. But what are you seeing as being a majority of the other trucks? Because it's relatively a residential area. What are you seeing as far as trucks that are going through that area?
Well, I see a lot of truck traffic. Most of it's deliveries.
Like a UPS truck or
UPS, Nebraska Furniture Mart, other construction companies coming and going. I don't see a lot of tractor trailers. I've recently put up security cameras because I like to see who's really creating problems like this on my property when they come 6 feet into my property and I've got to repair all this all the time. So I really can't speak to exactly who's doing it, but it's obvious that there's dual tires, which is truck traffic, tearing up the property. I mean, even coming up north, people will come off, I've seen a semi come off Valley Street and then have to come up Madison because they're not going to get by Harrison over by the Trumbull Park. And in order to come around that corner, north on Madison onto Grunther, because they're not going to go down, I'm not sure why they just didn't go down and turn around. In order to miss on the southwest corner, to miss the fire hydrant and the stop sign, they had to come 6 feet onto my property, which created backfill problems that I had to do, et cetera, and I have pictures of that. So it's just really, I'm not sure who's doing it, but it's obvious when I come home and I see the damage. So I'm trying to find out who's been doing it, or if I can, say this is a problem from this particular company, business, et cetera. But I haven't been able to identify that.
Yeah, the mayor already indicated that you even though you might have a truck route that says no trucks in this area, obviously delivery trucks and things like that. That's why I'm curious why you're seeing such a high number of trucks going down that particular location, because are they going to the school? Are they going to the church? Where are they?
I'm not sure where they're coming and going. Yeah. They're just following that feeder street, which is Madison. I mean, it's a big, wide street. It seems wider than most of the other ones. All the other streets come into that. It's the only north-south that goes that far, except for Harrison. And then it's the only east-west. I think when people may be using GPS or something else, and they're looking at the route saying, this is
Right.
the best and easiest route, here's Grunther, and then back out to 370.
And that's one of the things we discussed as well. That whole neighborhood, Overland Hills in that area, is probably one of the worst designed from a roads infrastructure perspective. Even people that live there, I think, have a hard time figuring out what the through roads are. So I think that's exactly right. It seems to be the logical through road, and then you hit the T intersection and you're caught.
Yeah.
Correct, yeah.
From my experience in Omaha, that's one of the issues that you run into. You might have a GPS, because people aren't familiar with the area, and they'll send you down a location and realize that, no, I shouldn't be going this way. So I think those are things that you can do also, is communicate with those companies and say, hey, you need to take these locations off your.
But if we can redesign that a little bit, it'll take care of some of the issues as well.
Yeah, if I get them on video, the company will get a copy of that video. So.
Ms. Klug.
Thank you. Mike, thanks for bringing the issue to our attention. One thing we haven't discussed is frequency, and I don't remember us talking about it in our meetings either. How often are you seeing this occur as far as fresh tracks cutting across the corner there?
Every 2 months, I have to make a major repair, but at least once a month or more, I see tracks that don't have to be repaired, but it's obvious that people are driving up into my yard, up into that right-of-way. So it's a problem. Most truckers are pretty good. I mean, if you got a Class A CDL, you're a fairly decent driver. You've had to go through some training, even if you're a rookie. And most of them take their time trying to get around that corner. So I would say at least once a month or more frequently, there's tracks in my yard. At least 6 to 7 times a year, I have to make a repair. And that's just too much. I shouldn't have to do that just to live on a corner. My friends told me not to buy a house on a corner, and I didn't listen to them. But I still like my house. I still like that corner. I still love the neighborhood. I grew up in the neighborhood. I grew up in the house across the street from me when we moved here in 1969. That particular intersection hasn't been, the houses were built in 59. I don't think it's ever been repaved or anything since then. I've got pictures here also of how it's all broken up. The curbs are in disrepair, up and down, the line of sight, the way it curves. Did some Google mapping and some other things, so I can give that to the city council also. It's, to me, twice a year is too much. Every other month is too much, certainly, and finding tracks all the time when it hasn't rained or there isn't snow melt or something else where there's damage is still too frequent to drive across that, which means if there's kids walking across the street, bicyclists, people walking dogs, they're in danger. That's a safety issue at this point too sometimes. So,
Okay.
because if they can't see the intersection and they're driving over the curbs, they might not see pedestrians either.
Thank you.
I just wasn't sure of the frequency, so thank you. Again, thank you for raising the issue so that we can try to find some
Mr.
remedies.
Well, I've got questions about the pictures you're showing there, and yes, that bothers me. If people are driving over the curb, across to your yard, that's a problem. The mayor indicated there may be a solution of redesigning that intersection, but if we do that, you lose part of your yard, and that impacts you. So is that a solution you're in favor of?
Actually,
Absolutely.
I'll jump in. Part of, I think, the tracks that he's showing, to the people, it's going to look like his yard, but it's actually in the right-of-way. There's a pretty wide right-of-way there.
Correct. It's almost
And-
12 to 15
yeah.
feet between the sidewalk and the street
And
itself.
so we've talked
around
about
that
changing
corner.
a little bit of the radius, and that would pick up the area that's being ran over.
So you would not be against that? you're
I
saying?
would not.
Okay,
I would
thank
be in favor of that losing. It really isn't losing any of my property here. It's really just, it would lessen me having to do repairs.
Mr.
And
Ingberg.
I'm in favor of that.
Mr. Ingberg.
Just a request, if the city doesn't have copies of the photographs you have tonight and that, I would appreciate if you have the time, if you could get those to the city clerk so we can make it part of the minutes.
Absolutely. I
That's right.
have a PDF of everything that I have printed here today, and I have extra copies I can distribute after the meeting.
Well, either that, or if you get, what I want to make sure we give to the city clerk, that way they become official part of the
Fair enough.
minutes of the meeting, that way we have them.
I'll certainly do that.
Record, thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other proponents or opponents? Close the public hearing. Item F1, Ordinance 1866. An ordinance to amend Chapter 81 of the Papillion Municipal Code entitled Alcoholic Beverages by adding new sections numbered 8121 through 8130 regarding entertainment districts. We have a motion approved by Councilman Jaworski. We have a second by Councilman Mumgard on the floor from the February 18th council meeting. And based on the discussion at the 18th meeting, there's basically council recommendation to direct the staff to propose an ordinance change, and I believe it was initially raised by Mr. Sunday. Instead of notification being the neighbors across the abutting road, it was to change it to a radius like we do with liquor licenses and other things. And that was to be brought back to tonight's meeting. And so the staff did do some research. You should have 3 possible motions at your table. The reason there's 3 because that language is in 3 different parts. We need to handle each one individually. And just real quick, I think the general direction was to move to a radius, but what was not clear, because there was a wide variety of discussion, is what that number was. I think we heard during council discussion at the last meeting, it was everywhere from, I believe, 100 feet to 1,000 feet. In the staff research, they landed on 300 feet as far as this recommendation. Obviously, you have a right to change that number, but the logic there for the 300, the notification in the alcoholic beverages section today, if you're doing a liquor license, is 300-foot notification. In our zoning, if there's a zoning change, we notify neighbors within a 300-foot radius on zoning changes. If you are going to move a building, we notify within 150 feet. And the city of Omaha and the city of Lincoln, within their entertainment districts, they just notify the neighbors if they are not separated by a public road or a public street. So that's almost abutting is the distance in there. And the city of Alliance just notifies the neighboring neighbors. So that's kind of the constraints we looked at. The farthest we had was 300, and that was our own code. And so that's the recommendation from staff. But I think what we'd look for is if there is a motion to amend, we can take them one at a time, and they are at your table. So if there's a council member that will make a motion to amend, Mr. Glover?
I'll make a motion to amend, but I have a quick question. When you talk about 300 feet being an entertainment district, is that just for serving alcohol, or?
No, that is, this is very specific to declaring this area an entertainment district. And so what this ordinance deals with is taking an area and formally designate it as an entertainment district. If we're going to take that action, this is the notification. Once the area is designated an entertainment area, the individual businesses still have to go through the normal process for the liquor. So that's an additional notification.
So any business that goes in the entertainment district, we would notify somebody within 300 feet
of that business. This ordinance is anybody within 300 feet of the bounds of the entertainment district.
Got it.
So this one actually has a broader reach.
Yeah, okay.
I will second that motion.
Mr. Sunday, okay. So I believe we need to take them one at a time. So what I'm taking, if you guys are okay, what we have is a motion to amend, and I'll just read the first one for the record. So it's a motion to amend Section 8124B2 to strike the first sentence and change it to a copy of a written notice of the application for designation of an entertainment district sent by the applicant to each owner of property lying within 300 feet of the proposed entertainment district. And so we have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion on that? Mr. Mumgard.
Well, see, the way you described the entertainment district, I think you described it accurately. It's really nothing other than a zoning designation.
Exactly.
You draw lines on a map. Nothing happens there until somebody comes in and gets a liquor license. So the neighbors are never impacted by the zoning district. They're impacted by the liquor licenses that come in there. So I don't really see any need to notify the neighbors that we're going to have this new category of land use there. My fear is that when we do that, then we're suggesting to the neighbors that, oh, something might happen here that'll affect you. You really got to be concerned. That's not the key. The key is when the liquor licenses come in. But I understand that this is something new, and we'll go on with it. And 300 feet notice is not a big deal, because I'll always be surprised if somebody comes in and says, "Oh, I need to know more about this." What are we going to tell them? That we'll wait until the liquor licenses show up, and then if that never happens, you don't ever have to worry about a thing. I'll vote for it in spirit of compromise, although I think it's really a lot of nothing.
Mr. Sunday.
Well, I know if somebody was going to build a business district near my home where there's going to be multiple drinking establishments with people carousing around outdoors, walking back and forth between those businesses with a drink in their hand and possible live music being played as entertainment at that venue, I would certainly want to be notified about it. We're not saying that we're not going to let them do it, just that we're going to give the neighbors the respect of knowing what we're up to. I think that's bare minimum what we should be doing as a council.
Thank you. Mr. Ingberg.
Although I don't necessarily disagree with what you just said, on the other hand, my concern is this. Are we going to make it more difficult or make it less appealing to create a entertainment district because we notify, as Mr. Mumgard said, people that live within 300 feet of the boundary of this zoning area? I don't want to discourage some innovation to do such a thing. And so I think the most important thing is, as Councilman Mumgard said, is what occurs within that zoning area. To me, if you spell that out ahead of time, like we do with all other zoning requirements, that kind of tells the neighbors then what they may or may not expect to happen there. So I'm not sure doing it twice is the answer, but I'll probably support it. But I'm not entirely convinced it's going to be a positive thing.
Any other council discussion? If not, please vote on the motion to amend.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
First one passes. We'll follow, all those comments will carry over to the next two because they're all applicable. Is there a motion to amend section 8126A2? Motion and second, and just for the record, again, it's going to strike that first sentence and it'll be replaced with a copy of a written notice sent by the permittee to each owner of property lying within 300 feet of the entertainment district. The notice shall contain the proposed modifications, the permittee and the manager's contact information, and a scaled drawing showing proposed changes. So we have motion and second. Any other discussion? Please vote.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Do we have motion to amend the first sentence of section 8127B3? Motion by Councilman Sunday. Second by Councilman Gaines. And again, for the record, we're going to strike the first sentence and we'll replace it with a copy of a written notice of the application for renewal of the entertainment district sent by the applicant to each owner of property lying within 300 feet of the entertainment district. Any council discussion? Please vote.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
So the original motion is amended. Any other discussion on the motion as amended? Please vote on the original motion as amended.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Item F2, Ordinance 1867. An ordinance to amend Section 20511 of Article 2, Development Definitions, Section 20518 of Article 2, Use Types, and Table 20538 of Article 4, Zoning District Regulations, all of Chapter 205, the Papillion Municipal Code, having to do with alternate energy production services, solar energy systems, and utilities. The applicant's the City of Papillion. Is there a motion to approve Ordinance 1867? Motion by Councilman Jaworski. Second by Councilman Stube. Any discussion? Please vote.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Item F3, Ordinance 1868, an ordinance to approve an amendment to the 2019-2020 fiscal budget. Is there a motion to approve Ordinance 1868? Motion by Councilman Klug. Second by Councilman Glover. Any council discussion? Please vote.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Item F4, Ordinance 1869, An ordinance to amend Papillion Municipal Code, Section 4613, entitled Rules of Conduct regarding motions and voting in council meetings, introduced by Councilman Mumgard. Is there a motion to approve Ordinance 1869? Motion. Motion by Councilman Jaworski, second by Councilman Mumgard. Any council discussion? If not, please vote.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Item F5, Resolution R200038. A resolution to approve an application from Texas Roadhouse Holdings, LLC, doing business as Texas Roadhouse, 7302 Olson Drive, to extend the premise of their Class IK liquor license to include extended indoor dining and waiting areas. Is there a motion to approve Resolution R200038? Motion by Councilman Jaworski. Second by Councilman Stube. Is the proponents, is the applicant here? Sorry I made you wait so long. I should have moved this up to the top of the agenda, but I'm calling for proponents. You don't have to come up, but if you want to.
The last time I was here, I sat through about 45 minutes of a pot-bellied pig. I'm always at the end, so I'm sorry. Yeah, it's a lot. Yeah, I know. My name's Steve Jackson. I'm the managing partner. I've been there almost 6 months of been open, so I want to say I'm very blessed to be doing business in Papillion. I know I'm a big bad chain, but I also employ 125 people, and I've got 3 kids that have gone through the system. I live here, and so I feel very blessed. Do you have any questions?
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you very much.
You bet. Thank you.
Do we have any other proponents? Do we have any opponents? Any council discussion? Please vote.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. You guys are a great community supporter, so appreciate that very much. It's all the regular agenda items. I don't think any committees have met. Do we have any comments from the floor? Seeing none. Any council comments? Just a few things from the last couple of weeks. Yes. What? Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Ingberg.
Perhaps you're going to mention it anyway, but I just wanted to thank the Employee Personnel Committee for the great job they did with the employee recognition banquet. They did a great job putting it together. And I will say this is the second big event I've been in attendance at the landing. And both of them have worked out beautifully the way it's designed. And the catering's been great. And I think it's a great venue for any kind of banquets or special events. They do a really good job there. And Lori, thank you for that as well.
Thank you. Just a few other things. We've got a new employee with us. He was introduced and voted on, but Phil Green is now sitting up at the adult table. And he just started this week, so Monday was his first day. So Phil officially is with us. Welcome. And again, just for the public, Ms. Myers has announced her retirement. That'll be probably the first week of July. Ms. Powers was already approved as the next city administrator effective up on that, and then Mr. Green is backfilling Ms. Powers' position. So at least for 3 months, we've got full staff of 3 people, but it's in anticipation of the retirement, so welcome. And then we also have in the audience with us, Lacey Partlow is with us as well from the library, and she's the new assistant library director. And I don't think most people have met you. You want to come up and share just quickly, introduce yourself and a little bit your background?
Well, I'm from Iowa. I'm from Stewart, Iowa. And while in Iowa, I worked for the State Library of Iowa, helping with their continuing education and certification program. Prior to that, I worked for the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals as a library tech, and I also worked at the public library in my hometown. So my library experience has been pretty varied. I've been grateful for that. And so far, everyone here has been great. Papillion's been wonderful, so I appreciate everyone welcoming me here. Yeah, I'm excited to take on this role. Matt's been wonderful, so I appreciate him welcoming me and training me and getting me up to speed. So, yeah, thank you.
It's a great library. Thank you very much and welcome. The police department had its 5th annual awards banquet, so that was very good, Chief. A lot of nice awards and recognition given there. And the League of Municipalities had the Midwinter Conference. Some good sessions there. The Sewer Wastewater Agency met. There weren't really any major decisions this month, so I don't think anything to report out there. And then the United Cities has met, and again, we're just in the legislative session, so most of it was just updates, and the primary update is the legislature's paralyzed right now trying to figure out property tax or the Nebraska incentive, so sit and wait. It was kind of the message, and so we're closely monitoring that. We actually meet every single week to get a report out of what's going on in the legislature in case we have to react to anything. Again, the Employee Appreciation Banquet, thank you, Councilman Ingberg, for attending that. Lieutenant Steve Young was recognized as the Employee of the Year. And again, that's a nomination from the employee group and then voted upon, so he was Employee of the Year. And Ms. Myers received a special award as well. And so I want to congratulate them. And then the Papillion-La Vista School District's going through a semi-annual accreditation program and review, and there's an on-site review team. So I attended a meeting in relation to that to talk about the city and the school district's partnership. Audit Ad Hoc Committee meets on the 17th. And March 12th, if you've got it on your calendar, you should have had an email about a Facebook grant ceremony. They will be looking for RSVPs if you're going to attend that. If you don't have that, let us know. And then again on the 13th at 3 p.m. is the Landing's grand opening. We've gotten a couple of questions about the coronavirus, and so just a quick update on that in case you do get questions on that. Of course, there's a lot of speculation and rumors about that. But Sarpy County Health Department does have a formalized system to try to stay up and make assessments. And they've actually declared what they call a level 1, which is just situational awareness. Lowest level, but they're watching and communicating both with federal, state, and local. And so we've got a coordinated response as far as information. And then if something else develops, there's already a coordinated through Sarpy Emergency Management. The fire department actively participates in that, so they're already plugged in. Deputy Chief Jones has actually been to some meetings in relation to that. If you hear about the Public Health Coordination Center, that's what's been activated for that level 1 information. They have regular calls and updates, again, with federal, state, local partners. And then we're taking that information internally and then assessing what's that mean for the city. And I think that information is basically in 3 ways. One, we know we got public gathering areas, library, Papillion Landing. So just starting to think through early on, if it does escalate to the next level, that we're prepared in those types of areas to respond. Then, of course, we got our own employees in the building groups interacting with the public, so we'll be ready from a risk management to address that. I think that's the primary thing. So we'll keep you updated, but we are plugged in, and the public safety, both police and fire, are plugged in. So I think the big message is probably just good sanitation, don't sneeze on people, and wash your hands. And if you don't feel good, stay home, kind of like the flu. Deputy Chief Jones, anything to add in relation to that?
Just mainly, we're deferring to the CDC for guidance at this point. Until it becomes an issue that develops here, we're deferring to the CDC.
Yep, thank you very much. And obviously, we're staying very engaged because our primary concern is going to be for police and fire that are interacting with individuals. So they're getting the information just as a hospital would that's interacting with people. So if you have any questions, let us know. Mr. Gaines.
Just had a quick question for fire and police. Are you guys receiving some sort of training if your firefighters or police officers run into a situation with somebody that's suspected of it, or?
There are procedures in place with the fire department and with the county. There's a meeting tomorrow with Sarpy County Sheriffs to discuss that, to make sure everybody's up to speed.
Do you guys, both departments, do you have everything that you need, I guess would be my follow-up question? Or is there anything else that the city can do to assist you?
At this point, we have all the materials and equipment we need to deal with the issue right now.
Yeah, the police department is pulling out all of our old procedures that we used to go through for pandemic flu. Basically, all across the country, law enforcement is pulling those out, re-looking at them, matching up towards what's the contemporary study, and that's exactly what we're doing tomorrow with the area law enforcement in Sarpy County. We included the fire department in that as well. And then we're keeping abreast of all of the different technologies that are being used and the equipment, and making sure that we have the best equipment. And so that's an ongoing struggle with anything, but especially with this.
So I'd say the basic thing, if you get questions for the public one, just let them know we are on I believe we're on top of it, and we got good communication. And then since there is so many different rumors now, especially through social media, just direct people back to CDC for the official source of information. Anything else? Seeing none, do we have a motion to adjourn? Motion by Councilman Glover, second by Councilman Gaines. Please vote.
8 yeas, 0 nays.
We are adjourned.